Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Friday's episode of Trending. It's great to be back with you again today to finish up the week. The show's brought to you, as always, by Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING for 10% off. Good morning, Richard. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Long time no see.
Yeah, we've not done one together now since last Friday, actually, to be fair, mate.
Yeah.
Feels like a long time though. A lot's happened this week, which we'll finish the show on and talk about what's coming up this weekend on the channel, which is very exciting, which has been keeping me busy this week. But it's been great to watch you and Gaz the last couple of days. There's been so many interesting things to cover and talk about this week, as there seems to just be every day now something else seems to be going off that needs some context put to it. So where are we starting today's episode?
That's the crucial thing, isn't it? Putting context to these things is what's most important. This one, to me, it seems like, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it seems to be this narrative is building that let's feel sorry for Elon Musk and certain people or institutes that are pushing the Musk and Trump narrative. He's a good guy, the world's attacking him. I've got people down from space. Look how nice I am. I'm not buying these Tesla fires, personally. This is just my personal opinion, that this isn't some sort of controlled. When something starts happening out of nowhere consistently, and it involves spray paints and a bunch of children that seem to come from college, it seems to be controlled. There's a feeling of extinction or rebellion to this thing that's going on here with these spray painting, at least. But this was absurd to me, that they tried to link it into people that support Palestine, obviously, being that Trump and Musk are heavily supporters of Israel. Paul Hoyon Kim, 36, was arrested by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department a week after at least 3 vehicles were set ablaze at the local Tesla collision center. Kim has tied to the Communist Party USA social media group, as well as groups such as Revolutionary Communist International and Hidden Palestine, Palestine Action, and several others. It was straight away, let's link this lad to supporting Palestine. I mean, I don't know about you, but because of one nutter that's lost the plot, you cannot drag all Palestinians in and the supporters of Palestinians in, and obviously the connotations. Oh, he was a Hamas supporter in there. It ticks too many boxes for me, Jay. I don't know about you, but it's too clean cut. They always overcook the broth. I feel like it's the same with these swatting stories as well. Let's feel sorry for that side. And Musk is our hero, and all the world's against him. I just don't buy it. But maybe it's because call me a conspiracy theorist, but it seems very, very contrived and controlled here, and a hint of extinction rebellion going on.
Yeah, it does. And it's a very, very easy label to put onto somebody who's causing disruption, if you like, is they support Palestine. Because they know the media narrative is always going to be on their side with that one. And they know that this is why I think it's so important. We mentioned at the top of the show, context, to get informed about what's going on. Because if you look at the kind of the Palestinian support, it's a very interesting demographic of people, because you've got people like us that are very supportive and, you know, are calling for peace and calling for them to have the right for their own state, all of those things. And on the same page as us, really, you have the kind of woke agenda, very, very extreme woke, young left-wing or extreme left-wing people in universities and younger populations that we wouldn't agree on much else. You know, we'll completely disagree on Ukraine. We'll have completely disagreed on COVID. We'll disagree on climate change and all those things. But on this, we're on the same page. However, and this is not, you know, coming from a position of authority on this, but it's coming from a position of having researched this extensively, as you have, as Gareth has, where you understand the game a little bit better. And I think the people that are coming at it from this is wrong way and look at it but from that perspective without understanding the context of why it's happening, they just see what's happening and are calling that out. They're very easy to manipulate into doing silly things. Hence why there's been certain protests supporting the Palestinian cause where there has been violence, where there has been silly things go on, because people get manipulated into doing it because they don't really understand the game they're playing. So this is an interesting one. Whether there is some young college students who are doing this off their own volition and they're just, they've been manipulated, or they've been, they're not thinking about the bigger picture and think this is actually a good idea, or whether it is completely controlled and it's, probably people that are paid help essentially for the system that are doing this to try and create this narrative of victimhood in the eyes of the richest man in the world who does what the hell he wants. Hardly someone we should feel sorry for, in my opinion. Whether they're trying to, manufacture that narrative by hired help, if you like, as we have seen over the last few years at protests right across the world on different things. You mentioned Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, BLM, X, Y, and Z, when people like Soros were bussing protesters in to create drama and outrage and create the narrative that they wanted to create. So whether this is something similar, I don't know. I think what's interesting, we just talked off air, Rich, as well, is the situation with the fires of electric cars is so lethal. So setting fire to these plants and so on, the potential danger of that is extraordinary. And also for all the climate guys, the potential release of CO2 into the atmosphere as a result of electric car fire, I should say, as opposed to a petrol car fire, is absolutely insane. These things are lethal. Like you said, they're essentially kind of bombs just sat there waiting to go off, because they don't always need to have anything happen to make them go off. They can do it on their own. And there's been lots of evidence, whether that be motorway crashes around the world, certainly a few I can think of here in Britain, where they've involved electric cars and they can't put them out. The fire services can't put them out. It's so lethal.
Yeah, it really is. And Elon Musk was telling you, he put a picture, do you remember it was outside one of Trump's hotels and one blew up about maybe 3 months ago?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
About a day before that, Musk put a picture out of a designed Tesla, one of these army truck looking things, horrible things.
Cybertrucks.
And it was Cybertrucks, and it was made to look like it was about to explode by design. It was an artistic point of view. It was a real one. They made it. And there's like hints of people, the control of it. Now, all they need to do is literally, they just need a spark to start the fire, literally in this case. But in terms of students and that getting involved with it, they just need a few people and put it out in the media enough for people to join in. So some of it will be what you're saying, probably young students getting involved. But is it an organic movement? I would hesitant to say no. The actual spark was probably lit from within, and that's going from 15 years of watching the same play over and over again. You had the keying cars 2 weeks ago, and that's gone, and it's just escalated to blowing them up now. And at the same time, you had like certain institutes being swatted, and that was happening all the time. And I'm like, this doesn't ring true to how events happen in the world. No. It feels too contrived to me. And who benefits? Elon Musk and these guys benefit of seeing like they're the victims. So I don't trust these guys. I do believe there's an element of organic nature in people joining in, but I think the initial spark was set on purpose, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I would completely agree, mate. And I think just to add to that, most human beings are followers. Most human beings don't sit and think completely off their own back and come up with their own conclusions and decide whether to do something or not based on entirely their own thoughts. Most people are followers. I've seen it firsthand. You want to break it down really simple, like a football away day. One fan goes into the away area for a scrap. All of a sudden, there's 10 behind him. If that one hadn't done that, the 10 wouldn't have followed, because they needed an instigator. So you don't need thousands of people at these protests that are agent provocateurs. You just need a couple. Of people to, like you just said, that word, be that spark, be that instigator, and then others follow. In the same way as we saw with the BLM ones, with the looting and stuff, every single person that did looting didn't go out necessarily to do looting, but they saw someone else do it and they got involved. They joined in, and someone got some new trainers. I want some. And it basically, it's a kind of a part of the human disease, really, that we kind of follow. So you don't need to control too many people, I don't think, to create disruption that we're seeing. So I'd completely agree that there may be some people there who have no idea, probably the majority have no idea that this is being controlled from higher up. And as always, the manipulation of those people is the way that these cultists bring about their outcome. So it'd be interesting to see what happens from here, because like you say, it's escalated in a few days from keying to graffiti to now arson. So we're interested to see what happens in the story as the weekend unfolds. We're going to move on to another story involving US politics at the moment. So during the first Trump presidency from 2016 to 2020, there was a few stories surrounding the island of Greenland and Trump expressing a desire to own it, to control it, to buy it, and it kind of didn't really move on from that initial rhetoric that we saw in the press. This time's been very different. Before he even got in office this time, after he'd won the election in that sort of lull period between the election and taking office, Greenland was heavily discussed about the fact that it had to be controlled by the US for the sake of the security, for the sake of space forces, all of those things. And that story has continued, and his son, Donald Trump Jr., was over there a few months ago to meet local officials. And obviously this has led to a lot of backlash in Greenland. People in Greenland don't want this. At the moment, the nation is controlled by Denmark, has been for a large number of years. They basically do what they want, but Denmark have a kind of a collective control over defence and things like that. But this story is in the BBC this morning. Greenlanders prepare for uncomfortable visit from US vice presidents. Now, J.D. Vance's wife was going over there anyway, apparently, for a bit of a sightseeing mission, if you like. And he decided, well, you know what? That's not fair for you to go on your own. I want to come too. That's literally what the story was yesterday. Don't want to miss out, as if it wasn't carefully planned. A high-powered delegation of US officials will spend Friday at a remote military base on Greenland in what's being viewed as the latest manifestation of America's designs on a sparsely populated, semi-autonomous Danish territory. The US group includes US President J.D. Vance and his wife Usher, White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. He's obviously, he may be going because his wife's going as well. Secretary of State Chris Wright and Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Well, interesting. All of them only want to go just to see the sights. The trip marks the latest twist in what is becoming a tangled diplomatic journey, in which US President Donald Trump has stated that he will own Greenland as if it is a matter of fact, not an opinion. They want to annex it and basically make it a US territory and, plummet all the natural minerals and so on that place has. When I think what's really interesting to talk about here is hypocrisy. And that's why this story stuck out for me, right? Is you've got the MAGA lot that will all support this. You've got the Trump base that will think this is great. We need to own Greenland. Make Canada the 51st state. Brilliant. That then years ago were talking about the fact that we need to stop dictators. We need to stop other nations going into other sovereign nations and annexing land, whether that be in Crimea, whether that be in Syria, whether that be wherever. Unless it's Israel, they do what they want. We've established 2 rules, one for Israel and the US, one for everybody else. And they're somehow championing this like this is a great thing, when essentially this is a dictator. If you're going into a sovereign nation that has its own population, ignore the Danish government for a second, we'll come to that, but just has its own sovereign people that live there, and you're going to then impose and dictate to them because underneath where they have their houses is some minerals that you quite like the look of. And that's a dictator. That's an invasion. Yet somehow when Trump does it, the MAGA lot are like, no, this is great. This is brilliant. I can't compute the arrogance and the hypocrisy of this. The Danish government have been quite, belligerent in saying that they're not going to accept it. But as we've seen with Trump, he's like a toddler. When he chucks his toys out when he doesn't get what he wants. So if this is part of the agenda and it's part of the cult's agenda that they want to happen, then who knows what's going to happen to make it come about, because it will come about. What's your take on this, Rich? Is this just, Trump being the bully in the playground and trying to throw his weight around, which he's a big lad, or is it deeper? Do you think there's something about Greenland?
Yeah, absolutely. And the major thing that you said there is that people don't want it. So that's a takeover. That's a dictatorship going in and doing. That's no different from Hitler coming into the Europe and trying to take it over. It's exactly the bloody same thing. So it's ludicrous for people to be championing this. But what they don't seem to understand, there is something about Greenland that's in terms of their Garden of Eden agenda. Now, Christopher John Viertnes speaks about this in many of his videos about Greenland being part of their agenda for a new Garden of Eden. So when they talk about nod and a wink minerals, there's part of that, especially in Ukraine, because that the minerals there are going into the AI computer chips. But when it comes to Greenland, it seems to be something that's going on underground. And we've been speaking about this for a long time. These Kabbalists do everything underground. These Messianic lunatics do everything underground. They dig tunnels, they have synagogues, everything is underground. And that's to do with their Kabbalistic beliefs of turning the tree of life upside down and replacing it with the tree of death. So the roots are on top and the branches are below. This is something's happening underground, I believe, in Greenland. And that's something to do with them living underground for these 700 years, or was it 7 days they call it, but it works out something different than that. 3.5 years, and then another 3.5, and that's their 7 years underground when this Armageddon's supposed to kick off. I'm not saying that they can actually make this happen, but this is their agenda, and there's something under Greenland, as there is in New Mexico, as there is in New York, quite clearly, where all of this stuff seems to be orchestrated from. They're going under. Even Zuckerberg's got his own base underground. They're all talking about being underground. Musk has got his own boring company. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. Actually, it literally doesn't take a rocket scientist, because Elon Musk isn't one, to figure this out. It's happening underground. There's something under Greenland, and it's to do with their Kabbalistic understanding, and it has a geopolitical edge. I think I'm not very good at geopolitics. You understand that. Sometimes I don't know what country we're in, but I think it kind of like basically fences in Europe a bit, from what I can tell, if you take US to be basically switching sides. So there's two elements. There's always like a surface element, like there is with the Torah and the Oral Torah and the Kabbalah and the Talmud and all of these different understandings and the other Abrahamic texts. There's different understandings of the same thing. So as with that, the principle is the same here. There's a geopolitical element, but there's an occult element, and that seems to be something that's underneath and been prepared underneath Greenland. And also there's a whole of these rumors about the Great White Brotherhood coming from Greenland. Now I see that as not an actual physical thing, these Great White Brotherhood angelic hosts, but I see it as a nod and a wink to that's where we're going to live, and it's part of this agenda. So yeah, underneath Greenland, mate. That's exactly where I think that they're going, and everything is happening underground.
Yes, there's always, with every story, there's always two elements to it. There's always the 5 cents obvious, in your face political excuse, justification for doing something, and that's always, what generally the alternative media and generally people that are skeptical of governments focus on. Whereas there's always the more sinister one underhand. And you're right, geopolitically, Greenland, where it is on the globe, perfect. It brings, if the US take it over and they have military bases, it brings their military bases closer to Russia, brings their military bases closer to the Arctic Circle. It's more control, X, Y, and Z. Minerals, potentially there, obviously, to be mined to make money, provide power, provide resources for X, Y, and Z, things like computer chips you mentioned. Again, that's obviously a geopolitical quite, you can't really argue with that. In the same way people went into Iraq for the oil. Well, that's be a factor of it, yeah, but it's certainly not the sole reason. The other reason is very much deeper down the rabbit hole that you're talking about there, which we'd encourage, obviously, people to go and research more. I think it's very, very important in the world now to become more and more informed on the real agenda behind things, because otherwise everything just looks so random. Everything just looks so chaotic. And when you understand the agenda, when you understand the outcome they're trying to bring about, all these different things that all appear to be incredibly random, all of a sudden actually make perfect sense and all fit in line, and you can see the path to the outcome. And then it's a lot easier then, I think, to head it off, because you know where everything's going. You're not constantly, getting neck ache going, what's happening now? So what's coming up next, Richard? What's your next story, mate?
They've found Hitler.
Oh, what in Oh yeah, I remember the story.
In Argentina.
Argentina,
he's hanging out with Maradona. Yeah, it's the only other Argentinian I know is Maradona. Secret documents on Nazis who fled to Argentina after World War II. We've been speaking about this for years. Your dad's written about this for a long time. But apparently the CIA have now released more documents to. They don't actually say in there that they found Hitler moved there, but they imply it. but they imply that a lot of the the Nazis went over to Argentina, totally forgetting that most of them went into NASA, by the way. Don't worry about that. They're going over to Argentina.
Operation Paperclip, wasn't it?
Paperclip, yeah. Argentina is set to declassify all government held files relating to Nazi fugitives who fled and settled in Argentina after World War II. The documents will likely include Nazi-linked bank accounts. How do you know? And archival records detailing the use of Nazi ratlins, which were monetary and logistic pathways that Nazis used to escape justice and flee Argentina following the war. I think that's flee to Argentina. They missed that out here. I mean, your dad was saying this kind of blitzing of all of these releasing files, but there's really no substance to it. Epstein's files are coming out, but they'll never talk about what's going on underground, which is the real story. You've got JFK's came out, and the only thing that came out of it was, there's an Israel connection that your dad wrote about 30 years ago. You know, this is all distraction from what's going on, and they can kick the can down the road in this way of annexing Greenland, building their underground Garden of Eden there, taking the minerals from Ukraine, pushing through the Greater Israel Project, building their temple. All of this stuff is all in line. But this stuff, distraction. It's stuff that we've known for years. But what they're doing is they're confirming things that we've known for years. And we're going, yep, see, we were right. And then you sit back and go, yeah, I'm right. And then you're not really keeping an eye on what's going on. You knew you were right anyway. Don't worry about them. The issue I have is that you need them to confirm whether you're right or not. Like, we're right, but we won't know until the enemy confirms that we're right, if we're right. Like, who gives crap what they're, sorry my language, but who cares what they say? They're the enemy. That's the point. Like, you don't want the person who's abusing you to go, you know what, I can only get them convicted when they admit to it. That's not how it works.
Yeah, no, I get it. I agree. Well, I think it's almost like, the hard analogy of the artist. The artist's only appreciated when they're gone. They're never appreciated in their moment. Whether that's musicians in a lot of cases, actual artists, Da Vinci's and people like that. I kind of feel like this movement's a bit like that. You'll write something, a passage of time will go past, and two things happen. One is when something initially happens, there's outrage, there's a real question from the public about what's going on. And then obviously during that period, the mainstream machine needs to control the narrative because that could get away from them very quickly. If it came out, like the day JFK was assassinated, for example, that it was an Israeli hit, the reaction is very different. If it comes out now, when most people that were, a lot of people that were alive in that period are not alive anymore, those people in positions of power aren't in positions of power anymore. The people that would have pulled the trigger may not well be alive anymore. And those that called the shots will not be alive or in positions of power anymore. The outrage is significantly less, so they let things seep out. What really should then happen is people go, well, hang on, they covered this up 30 years ago. What are they covering up today? So, the same agencies, the same people, not necessarily the same people in some contexts, but certainly the same organizations, and in America in particular, a lot of the same families that were involved in the period when JFK was assassinated and Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated, were also there in 9/11. They were there during those attacks and the wars that have followed in the Middle East. So why then, if you accept that that's not true down the line, you're not then questioning everything that your mainstream authorities tell you today, because they've lied in the past, provably. And they didn't just lie, they covered it up for decades. So that's where I find that really frustrating, in the sense of, that's why I use the artist analogy, is you made something great once, you wrote about it, you exposed it. But then what you're writing today, now it's rubbish, mate. It's rubbish. And that's the thing, obviously, David's had to deal with a lot more than us because he's been on it so long, where you would think that you had the right to some credibility based on what you've said before that would earn you the respect that people would go, okay, you've got a lot in the bank in the sense of information that you've said that's then happened, information that you've put out that you can verify. What are you saying now? Okay, there's not as much evidence for that today, but based on what you've done previously, I'm going to give it the respect that there's something here to look at. I'm not going to dismiss this by reflex action. Yet that's not what we see, is it? And we've covered this a few times. Whatever the topic may be, whether it's this, whether it was the grooming gangs, whether it was political manipulations, whether it was overseas wars, all of it. They focus on the past because they want you looking there, because they don't want you to go, well, is this still happening now? They want to throw some people under the bus from decades ago to point out, look, we're exposing it. What happened there was bad, but it's definitely not still happening now. When it's absolutely still happening now. It's absolutely still happening now. Happening on a bigger scale than ever before because of the stakes that are at play here. So yeah, for me, this is just a bit of a ego boost for the alternative media in a sense, because people can come out and, like you just said, and said, "Look, we told you." But then, what's it going to change? What does it really mean? If the story was coming out, exposing the fact that that 9/11, for example, was definitely a Mossad hit, then all of a sudden, maybe I'd go, yeah, that needed to come out. That was massive. That could change the attitude of a lot of people, because so many people alive today remember 2001. They remember that day vividly, and it would change potentially the attitude of a lot of people around the world towards current events. But they're not going to do that. They're going to chuck out something about, Hitler living in Argentina for a few years. It's like you say, mate. It's chucking crumbs.
It absolutely is, and things like these tunnels and these things underneath the pyramids that Josh Sigurdsson was down and talking about 8 years ago. 8 years ago, he was down there taking pictures of himself, and suddenly it's this new news. It's total nonsense. So it's all distractions from there, and I completely agree with you. One thing that really frustrates me is that you've got RFK Jr., who's there with Trump side by side, and then finding out that his uncle was killed by Israel, but he's still there waving the flag. And there's something very wrong there. And his dad, exactly. Yeah. So there's something very wrong there. That's the question that needs to be asked of him repeatedly. He had a chance to make a difference, and I think they got something on him. So it's clear, if you found out that your dad was murdered by Mossad and these guys, then why would you be still supporting that country that's pushing that stuff? That makes no sense to me unless you have to. So you've been forced
and his cousin as well, JFK Jr., died in a plane crash, didn't he, at Martha Vineyard with his wife a few days after he said he was going to run against... Who was he going to run against? Was it Bush? Bush in 2000, something like that? Never tell trusted friends anything. Just do it. Yeah. That seems to be I don't think in politics, trusted is a word that can be used with a straight face. So speaking of politics, we're going to come back over to the UK for this story here. This week's been, we mentioned at the start of the week, me and Gareth did, that there was a lot of fear and apprehension ahead of a spring statement on the country's finances from Rachel Reeves, who, as I said on Monday, wouldn't get a job as an accounts assistant at a backstreet dodgy accountant's firm, but somehow is apparently chancellor. So this is the story. UK child poverty numbers reach a record high. So in a country that is giving billions and billions away, in a country that claims to have the moral high ground and the moral compass of how the rest of the world should live, and how dare you question the morality of the British government and British government decisions. In April 2024, so this number I can say quite confidently will be higher than this one, given we're nearly another year down the line, there were 4.45 million children living in poverty in this country. Now, this is a country of around 70 million people. So if you're going to work out the different age demographics of people, 4.4 million children, which is anyone under the age of 16, that makes up quite a large percentage of the overall population of all ages. So it makes up a hell of a percentage of people under 16. You're classed in poverty if you are living in a household with income lower than the average of the country. So this is the government's own poverty measurement scheme. So this figure, released by the Department for Work and Pensions, has increased is an increase of 100,000 children from the previous year, and it equates to, here's the percentage, 31% of UK children. So for 3 children in every 10 are living in poverty in this country. The figure has risen sharply since 2021, and the Child Poverty Action Group, which probably does absolutely sod all, predicts 4.8 million children will be in poverty by the end of this parliament between 2029 and 2030. And it's calling for the government to scrap the two-child benefit limit in its upcoming poverty strategy and pause recent proposals for wider benefit cuts. Now, there's so many aspects to what causes poverty, so many. We couldn't dive into them all now. That's, a whole series really to discuss. One of them, obviously, is the welfare system and the fact that funding is being withdrawn from people. There is the two-child benefit cap, which me and you will understand. Rich, every single parent in the country gets a certain amount from the government for having a child. You get a bit more for having a second, and then it stops. And that's the government's contribution for things like nappies, milk, X, Y, and Z. You obviously get childhood nursery places, some funded. You get a certain amount of hours so that parents can go back to work, because the cost of nurseries versus the wages are insane. I remember years ago, a good friend of mine wanted to go back to work, and it worked out for her £6 a month better off to go to work than to not work and claim all the benefits. So clearly there's no incentive there. The other one has been the incredible cost of living. The rise in that, the rise in taxation, and the lowering of wages, and the fact that jobs are much more scarce and much harder to come by. Again, there's so many factors for that: a rising population, increase in AI, usage of jobs, the decline of the service industry, everything going online, the decline of the high street. There's so many reasons for the lowering of the job market. There's also a lack of key skills, I think, within certain demographics of people, where they're not getting the education they need. The world's changed significantly, obviously, in the last few years, away from hand motor skills to more online-based technical skills, and there's a massive gap there in skills. Another one being obviously the rise in taxation, which is leading of both individuals and businesses, which is leading to businesses hiring less people, giving less pay rises, people having less money in their pocket, and then a lot of businesses then having to pass on that increase in tax to the customer by increasing their prices. So there's so many factors that have led to a cost of living. The cost of housing has gone absolutely insane, whether that's buying, renting, leasing, whatever. The cost of running a car has dramatically increased. All of these things are going to lead cost of food, if you call it food, most of what people consume. So all of these is pushing and squeezing people more into a state of poverty. And as a result, the children are suffering when we live in a country where we should be prospering. We should be the world should be prospering, but particularly a country like the UK, you're rich in natural resources. You got an island nation. You can control your borders. You can control so much. You've got, beautiful tourism potential. You've got so much here that should make this country thriving. You've got some great people with great ideas, some innovators. You've got, a rich history of creating amazing things, whether that be, in the manufacturing industry through things like cars and so on. And it's just being destroyed. And as Gaz has pointed out, I think he spoke about on Monday, if you were trying to destroy a country on purpose, you wouldn't do a lot different. And I think one of the key things I see here is the last thing that they want is a young demographic. Because young people generally, or maybe less so now, one through factors like this, another through the online world changing the psychology, violent video games, the social media fake reality that's been constructed have changed this demographic. However, most young people, historically, young people were the ones with the energy. They were the ones with the drive. They were the ones with the dynamism. They wanted to make things happen. They were in a hurry. They were in a rush to get things done. They wanted to do things with their life, experience things, travel the world, start businesses, get married, have children. They wanted to bring things. They had energy. I remember being 18, couldn't wait to get started with life. There's a bigger world out there. It's really exciting. What's my life gonna come to? They don't want that. They don't want young people looking at the world with the eyes of potential of, I can do anything. I can create. I can become something. I can make myself something, whatever that may be. They want people beaten down. They want people completely disengaged and disenfranchised, looking at the world, terrified, going, how the hell am I going to survive in this place? How am I going to be able to move out from my parents' house? How am I going to get a job? And, you know, in some places, London being one, even if I get a job, I might still be on the street because I'm not going to earn enough to have a house. What the hell? What if my parents lose their job? What if my parents die and the government take half the money off me? Well, how am I going to live? That's the attitude they want people in, because it's disheartening, it's depressing, which is one aspect of the mental health crisis is coming from that. And the other one is when they bring about this new world, you'll own nothing and be happy. You'll have no secrets and you'll be happy. You're a lot less resistant to it because, one, you've never known anything else. The only other option you've known is depression, is poverty, is deprivation. And also, you're desperate. And you want something to stop that from carrying on. So, okay, yeah, all right. Take everything. Just give me a house. Just give me my car. Just give me some food stamps. You can listen to all my conversations. It's fine. As long as I've got a roof over my head. You know, that's the psychology they want people in. And this is an aspect of it.
It's a massive aspect of it. You say, I think I spoke to Gaz yesterday about it. You own nothing and be happy means that they will decide the policies on how you use the things that they loan to you. That's what people aren't getting. It's not yours. The government is taken over by corporations. No longer is you're voting for anyone. You're going to have a CEO of the world, of a country, speaking over you, and their policies will decide on how you use their technology. It's a major part of it. Another thing missed out on that story, and then what occurred to me is when you were talking about the numbers of children in poverty, well, wouldn't that by proxy mean that the parents are in poverty too? So that number is a segment within a segment of people living in poverty. So you're looking at a large portion of the UK living in poverty. Now, they didn't specify what counts as poverty in terms of how much income a house has to have. And then that doesn't actually make a difference in terms of how many children you've got, what a disability that child's got, what care they need. There's so many specifics which could drag you into poverty in terms of what your needs are. That's why communism doesn't work. That's why none of this stuff works, is because everybody has an individual need and desire. That's the whole point. So you know, it really, really depends on what your needs are, whether you're living in poverty. It's not a zero-sum game. It depends Rich, how much you need.
Just for context, as you're saying this, the definition, according to this story, I should have mentioned that, I missed that one. The relative poverty definition, which is measured both before and after housing costs, refers to people living in households with income below 60% of the country's median figure. So let's say, to pick a simple number, for people, if the average salary is £20,000, you're in poverty if you're earning 12 or less. That's essentially it.
Is that per person, per adult?
Per household. Per household.
Per household.
So I think, you know, it's very clear to see, just in my lifetime, I first moved to Derby, right, in 2012, 2013. God, I feel old. And the average salary in this area, I think, was around £26,000 a year, right? You could, on that, have easily had your own flat, run a car, and lived a life where, you know, you're not wealthy, but you're okay. You can cover your bills, you can drive a car, you can have a beer on a Saturday afternoon, you can, you know, live in it. You probably have a holiday once or twice a year, and you're relatively comfortable that you can pay your bills. Now, you would barely cover your rent with that and a house. You know, you got flats here, and Derby is very much not an affluent area, and it's very much not an expensive area to buy property or to rent property compared to other parts of the country. You know, you're looking at £800-900 for a 2-bedroom flat in a very bog standard area. That was £500 when I first moved here, and wages haven't gone up, and the cost of everything else has gone up. So as you point out there, if they're the adults, then by byproduct, the children of those adults struggling to do that are going to be suffering as a result. The reason they don't do the figure the same when it comes to adults is because they say that adults have the opportunity to do something about it because they can go to work. Whereas a child, you're a victim of your environment. You can't do anything about it. You're not going to work if you're 4 and you're growing up in poverty. You're pretty helpless to it. That's why the stat tends to focus on kids.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense in that way, but it really only tells a tiny bit of the story, because it's almost like taking down the trickle
Yeah.
down effect out of it and saying that your parents' situation and what they're forced to do has no relation to what you're forced to do,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous,
Absolutely.
quite frankly, isn't it? It makes no sense. Yeah, exactly what you're saying, mate. And when you're in that desperate times, desperate measures, you have no time to create, no time to prosper. You're just trying to get by from week to week. So,
You are,
that's where they want you.
Again, to just finish on another aspect of that, which I think is really important, is if you're two parents and you are working your arse off to try and provide for those kids, you're not seeing them either. So the dynamic and the relationship between the parents and the kids is becoming more and more strangled as a result of these policies as well. Because, you know, if you're growing up, if your kids are growing up in poverty, you're doing everything you can to prevent that. So you might be working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, Saturday, Sunday, whatever you have to do to put food on the table. And as a result, you're missing everything and your kids are missing out. And that's what they want, because then the kids become disengaged, disenfranchised, much easier to manipulate, control, much easier to radicalize, which is what we're seeing a lot with younger people who don't have parents around. And also the state becomes the primary source of control. You know, school, X, Y, and Z become their primary kind of authority figure rather than their parents. So there's so many aspects to this. You could cover this for days, all the different angles that they are using to attack. But poverty and, you know, creating a situation where people just don't see a solution, they don't see an outcome. We're the first generation, sorry, my kids are the first generation technically, that are going to, and your kids, Rich, of our age, that are projected to have a worse standard of living than their parents. That's the first time. I mean, aren't we at the pinnacle of evolution? Aren't we at the pinnacle of technological development? Shouldn't we be going forward? Shouldn't people be getting more prosperous? Shouldn't the world be getting better? Why is it getting worse? Really simple answer. It's getting worse because it's being designed to get worse.
Yep.
That's the simple answer. But we're going to finish on something positive as always on a Friday. I have no idea what's coming, Rich, but I'm excited.
This was a really sweet story. So, couple breaks record for longest living marriage. How long do you think they've been married for? Like married, not alive for, married for.
80 something?
It's actually not, you're quite close actually. The Brazilian couple has been married for 84 years. 84 years.
Wow.
And 85 days,
That's
according
incredible.
to this article. Says the Guinness World Records. 2 centurions, or centenarians even, broke the Guinness World Record for longest marriage of a living couple, as reported by Jam Press and confirmed by Longevest, a database on life. So I can't pronounce their names, so I'm going to put Mrs. Dino is 105, and she first met Mr. Dino, who was 101, while collecting sweets in Brazil in 1936. Imagine that. They're all over 100. And look at the picture of them. It's lovely. They're absolutely, I think they're laughing. They're either in pain or they're laughing. I can't quite tell. It's a still image. They remained acquaintances until they met again in 1940. So they waited 4 years. Wow. This made me laugh, this bit a little bit. When the couple reunited, Manelio said he fell in love with her at first sight. It wasn't the first sight, it was the second sight, because you've just told me that they met again. He just declared his sentiments to Maria, who felt the same. The couple had now been happily married for 84 years, but this was good. Mary's mother was unsure of the couple's union at first, according to Jam Press. She didn't think it would last. So maybe they just stay together to annoy her. Now they're just really happy about it. Go, we'll show her, we'll make this last. And then 85 years later, going, I think we proved our point now.
I think probably, yeah. That's incredible. That's amazing.
It is.
God, me and you are going to have to live to a world record age to get anywhere near that. Not that we're married to each other, obviously. You know, we missed that boat.
No, but one day we might be. It's 2 years I've only got under my belt. I've got another 82 to go. There's no chance I'm going to be in 82 years. Absolutely not. I hope not.
You got 2 years. What am I? Five, I think, this year. 6, maybe. 6 this year, yeah. 6 years this year. Jeez, that's a hell of a target, isn't it? That's amazing. I mean, the union of, I mean, I'm not a religious person. I know you're not either, but I do think there is something about the kind of union of two people, of taking on the world together, of raising children together, and going through all of life's pitfalls and challenges and all the good moments together. You know, having somebody to share that with. You know, both of us have experienced some loss in the families in the last couple of years, and having that partner to go through that with, to lean on, to be there. And, you know, I'm sure we'll reciprocate one day. And, you know, when you come home and it's been a great day and amazing things have happened, you've got that person to share that with. And I think, I do really believe that is. I don't think necessarily if that is part of the Matrix scam, I like that bit personally.
Yeah, that bit.
I think that's part that I can get on board with.
That's what what we built, and that's what we bring in with each other. That's the whole point. Like I say, it's like if you were in prison, are you really in prison if you're with all your mates in a big building running around having a laugh? Is that prison or is that Butlins? It's what I mean. You can't
I'd probably
leave,
rather take Wormwood Scrubs over Butlins, having gone last Christmas, mate, to the Skegness one. If you said to me, do you want a weekend in Belmarsh or a weekend back there, I'd have to think for a minute. I'd have to think.
Very similar things go on. So today the family has expanded to include 55 grandchildren, 54 great-grandchildren, and 12 great-great-grandchildren. Imagine that Christmas present list.
That's expensive.
Just get them a voucher.
Jeez, that's good. Yeah, that's an expensive Christmas list, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine
Lovely
that'd be
story,
amazing.
though, isn't it?
Great-great-grandma. That's really cool. Well, shout out to them over in Brazil. Maybe there's something in the water, because living to 105 and 101 is a hell of an innings as well. So, yeah, well done. Shout out to them. Nice story, Rich. I like that one, mate. Right, we're going to quickly explain that this Saturday, in just, 24 hours' time, we have a new production coming out on Iconic called Persona Non Grata, which is a brand new documentary produced by Christiana. I was over in Holland on Wednesday nights for the premiere of that, which was absolutely fantastic. Amazing evenings, amazing people. And the documentary basically documents David's ban from essentially the world, dating back to 2022 now, in fine detail, going through the court case. There's videos from within the court where you hear what the government lawyers say and the insane things they use to justify their decision to do that. There's also some really nice personal stories in there of, the lawyers that are running this case on David's behalf over in the Netherlands and down in Paraguay, who have done all of this off their own back because they know it's one of those line in the sand moments that whether this affects you or it doesn't, it's going to one day, because they silence one person and they set that precedent. They can then come for you. That whole Nazi phrase that people used to describe of, I wasn't a trade unionist, so when they came for them, I did nothing. I wasn't a Jew, so when they came for them, I did nothing. And then when they came for me, there was no one there to defend me. That's the principle that we're trying to get across with this film, that this is not necessarily about just David's story. It's about the fact if they can do this to him, they can do this to anyone. So that's available tomorrow on Iconic. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Rich. It's been on the Dropbox for a couple of weeks. I don't know if you've managed to see it, but it's a really good film. I think it's up there with the best, if not one of the best, one of the best, if not the best production that we've made. And at this time now, with all the things we're seeing in the world, discussing this topic is so important. So we're going to put the trailer straight away following this episode. It'll be on the end of this video if you want to check it out, and it'll be available on Iconic from midnight tonight. So that's the weekend plan sorted, Rich.
Yeah, congratulations, Christiana and David, on making it. So I'm looking forward. I have seen some of it. I would like to see the rest of it, so I'll be watching too.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure as always, mate, talking to you. And we're going to have a weekend now where hopefully nothing too insane happens and everyone has a good time. And we will be back on Monday morning with myself and Gareth at 10 o'clock. Until then, take care. Thanks for watching as always, and head over to shop.iconic.com, grab some coffee and show us your support if you're in a position to do so. If you're not, just keep sharing, keep watching. We'll see you next week.
Nederland weigert de Britse complotdenker David Icke.
Ja, hij zou eigenlijk dit weekend komen spreken op het Museumplein in Amsterdam.
Gisteren kregen we te horen dat hun belangrijkste gast, complotdenker David Icke, het land niet in mag.
Nederland heeft eerder in het verleden haatpredikers geweerd. En ik zie Icke als een haatprediker.
Haatprediker, salafistische haatprediker, moeten we verhinderen dat ze naar Nederland komen.
Dus hier wordt verwezen naar het verbod richting de jodenhater die ons land binnen wilde komen.
Erg jammer dat zo'n man zo'n platform krijgt op een plek als Amsterdam, überhaupt.
I'm Jeroen Pols.
My name is Willem Engel.
My name is Mordecai Crispijn.
Nobody needs to know what the game is and how it's played more than Jewish people, because they're being played as much as, if not more, than most.
What governments around the world are doing is misusing the legacy of the Jewish people as a weapon and a shield.
I don't care if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Hindu. I don't care if you're black or brown or white or sky blue bloody pink. Just don't impose your beliefs on other people and you'll hear nothing from me.
Deze zaak komt ook voort uit de eigen keuze van meneer Ike om een aanjager van een, wat de minister betreft, verzonnen verhaal over een kwaadaardige elite die de mensen onderdrukt. Ja, hij kiest ervoor om dat gedachtegoed over de hele wereld te willen verspreiden.
Het moet niet zo zijn dat onze staatssecretaris de reikwijdte van de vrijheid van meningsuiting gaat bepalen.
De kunst om tegelijkertijd twee tegenstrijdige overtuigingen te accepteren of te geloven, zelfs als deze elkaar uitsluiten, zonder enige cognitieve dissonantie te ervaren. Dat noemde George Orwell in zijn roman 1984 Doublethink.
Wij hebben geen toestemming nodig om te spreken. Blijf je uitspreken.
So the idea to go to England was actually born because I was looking for a way to actually show that we cannot be stopped.
And I'm eternally grateful that you make the effort to come from all the different places that you came from.
Believe what you like, you are what you are. We're all an expression of the same consciousness in the end anyway.
Real freedom is control of your own perceptions and not letting someone else tell you what to believe.